So, last December, around this time, I capped off the end of the year by doing a video where I went through my entire Steam library and played a bunch of games that I had purchased but never actually touched. I then vowed to stream those games in the coming year, and I did. Or at least I did for most of them. Some of them I decided I didn't want to keep playing, while others I still haven't gotten to. 2020's been a wild one, as I'm sure you're aware. Regardless, I found that video concept to be a lot of fun, so I decided to do it again. Because as luck would have it, I still haven't learned my lesson of purchasing a bunch of games that are on sale that I have no time to play. So just to reiterate the rules from last time, the game has to be one that I have not played before now. If there's any save data or time on the clock, it doesn't count. Also, I'm only going to play an hour of the game. I'll then decide if I want to stream it at a later date, play it off stream on my own time, or never touch it again. So, how many games are on the list this year? Well, okay, that's certainly a step down from last year, though when I add in the games I still have left to stream from the previous list, I guess we're still closer to where we started, huh? Assassin's Creed Odyssey is the 11th mainline Assassin's Creed game, and if that number is intimidating to you because you're afraid this is going to be a Kingdom Hearts situation, don't be. Odyssey, as far as I can tell, appears to be mostly self-contained. While the overarching modern-day Assassins vs. Templar plot is still going on, the game's introduction spends less than 5 minutes on it before throwing you right back into ancient Greece. You start the game fighting as King Leonidas at the Battle of Thermopylae against the Persians to serve as a tutorial and also to give the player that taste of power aspect that games like to do, where they give you a bunch of endgame abilities and powers to give you something to look forward to before smacking you back down to level 1. Afterwards, the game jumps back to the aforementioned modern-day subplot for just enough time to set up why this new character is using the Animus to mentally travel back to ancient Greece. In this specific case, the Peloponnesian War, where she will venture through this era through the eyes of either Alexios or Cassandra, the male and female character options. Assassin's Creed has always had an open world element to it, but Odyssey seemed to embrace that concept more than the previous games I had played. Right off the bat, you're given a quest and a direction for the story, but there isn't much stopping you from just running off in any direction to explore. And also, like most open world games, there isn't much gameplay urgency in keeping you on the main quest, opposed to just looking around. Oh, what's that? My friend, the helpful street urchin, has been kidnapped by bandits and they're gonna kill her? Sounds rough, but I'm gonna explore this scorched town here on the beach because that's vastly more interesting. Too bad nobody else seemed to care when I got there, though. The main story quests help serve as a tutorial, so if you're not doing them early on, you might end up having a harder time than necessary, since you don't realize that the B button is your crouch button, and you need to do this in tall grass in order to properly stealth, opposed to earlier games where you just sorta slipped into the weeds. When that happens, you might end up saying, F it, and going full ham on a cave of bandits, and deciding to just be a mighty Spartan warrior and not a sneaky assassin later. Not speaking from experience or anything. Overall, I think that's also one of the things I found weird about Odyssey. It doesn't feel like an Assassin's Creed game that I'm used to, not just because of the rebooted gameplay style with its heavy emphasis on RPG skill trees, branching dialogue, and stat-based equipment, but also the general vibe of the framing device of the plot. The modern-day mental time travel plot was always something I really liked about Assassin's Creed. I felt like it gave the series some unique personality and helped justify feeding you all the historically accurate information that Ubisoft's teams always boast about. I was more invested in what was going on in the modern day with Desmond than the individual plots of each game. So when Desmond's story with Assassin's Creed ended in 3, my interest in the series plummeted as well. Maybe more of it will be revealed later on in the story. After all, I only played an hour, but Odyssey feels like Ubisoft just wanted to make a Greek open-world adventure epic, but had to slap Assassin's Creed onto it, or it would not sell. I mean, I haven't seen a single hint of a hidden blade or a white hood so far, but it wouldn't surprise me if they threw those at me later. I hope so, because I have to say, I've never been a huge fan of the Greek mohawk helmet style aesthetic personally. Anyway, none of that is to say I didn't enjoy my hour with Assassin's Creed Odyssey. The game was fun, and if you throw some RPG mechanics at me with the hint of becoming an extremely powerful badass with dozens of cool abilities and a cool set of armor by the end of the game, you'll get me hooked. I'll definitely play more next year. so it gets a pass in this category. There's definitely a genre of games out there that are based around having an old retro 8 to 16-bit pixelated graphic style, being rage-inducingly difficult, and also seeking to tell a heart-wrenching story. I suppose it wouldn't be inaccurate to say that the game Celeste, developed by Extremely OK Games, falls into that category as well. But even then, I found the rage-inducingly difficult aspects to be significantly downplayed. More on that in a minute. Celeste tells a story about a young girl canonically named Madeline on a quest to climb a mountain. Why is she climbing this mountain? Well, I'm not sure. The true reason of her quest hasn't been revealed to me yet, but given that this is an indie game, I'm willing to bet that the entire game is going to be a metaphor for mental health in some capacity. That, or it'll be a metaphor for a young girl undergoing her transition, since I recall there was quite a stir kicked up in the gaming community some time ago when the writer for the game confirmed that the main character is trans. It might sound like I'm poking fun at the game's narrative, but in truth I'm just being a cheeky bastard. I'm actually quite enjoying the mysterious narrative that Celeste is doling out so far, and I'm quite invested in the main character, Madeline, and what the true purpose of her quest is. I want to see her climb this bizarre, eldritch mountaintop, and overcome her trials and find the gratification that she's seeking, whatever that may be. Also, if the game's story is truly a metaphor for depression, or a girl undergoing a transition, or something similar, and it can tell that story well, then I'm all for it. I view video games as an art and a medium that can be used to inspire others and tell stories through a unique presentation method. Perhaps I won't be able to directly relate to all the troubles that Madeline faces in her life, but knowing that someone out there may be able to find meaning in this kind of story is comforting. Full support. Gameplay-wise, Celeste may be a trial-and-error puzzle platform, Kaizo trap, or whatever this genre's called, but it also never stops being encouraging and letting you know that it's alright that you're dying dozens upon dozens of times in your quest, because it believes in you and knows that you can make it eventually. Aw, thanks, game. The game's loading screens give you encouraging tips like how the extra strawberries that you can collect in each stage have absolutely no bearing on anything, and you should only collect them if you want to. It was actually because of that message that I found myself sometimes taking a pass on a particularly tough strawberry, whereas normally I would have been too stubborn to let it go, and it would have ended up creating more frustration instead of having fun. And while the puzzle platforming in Celeste can get pretty tricky, outside of the bonus objectives or the deliberately hard B-side stages, nothing ever feels out of reach. You're given everything you need to play through the rest of the game early on, and anytime a stage has a gimmick, it's presented in a way where it's easy to understand it before the game starts to mix up how it's implemented. Overall, I quite enjoyed Celeste in my hour with it. I'm looking forward to playing through it more. I predict it'll end up being quite short, but as long as it's fulfilling, then that's fine by me. Control is another one of those games that I've heard nothing but praise for, and yet I barely have heard what it's actually about. I made a joke about the main character basically being Silver the Hedgehog if he was a redhead woman with a gun, but in truth I know nothing about this game's premise other than it follows a redhead woman with a gun who uses telekinetic powers to do stuff. Kinda like Silver the Hedgehog. Hey, did you know that writing good jokes is kinda hard? I think going into this game mostly blind was the best thing I could have done, though. Control tells a weird psychological X-Files-esque thriller where the main character, Jesse, shows up at this place called the Federal Bureau of Control. Jesse soon discovers that there's more going on here, though, as there's no employees to initially greet her anywhere, and also she starts running into extra-dimensional beings known as the Hiss, who are possessing people and trying to kill or convert anyone they can find. Jessie manages to get her hands on some otherworldly gun that the previous director of the Bureau used to kill himself, and also starts seeking out objects of power, mundane-looking objects like a floppy disk or a landline phone, which gives her all kinds of telekinetic powers that she uses to fight back against the Hiss. All while trying to delve deeper into exactly what the Bureau is hiding, and to find out more information about her missing brother, the person she was here trying to find in the first place. Also, she becomes the new director of the Bureau, now that the previous one is dead. Okay, quick show of hands, is anyone a little lost? Everything I just described is brought to light in the first hour of Control, but even then the game's narrative intentionally keeps a lot of important details on what is actually happening in the dark. Jessie's quest and her backstory are slowly given more meaning through bits of dialogue, some environmental storytelling, and the occasional bit of exposition, but Jessie herself is rarely put into a position where she is just a full-on audience surrogate. The kind of character that constantly has to ask, wait, what is a gun? When moments like these do come up, Jessie responds with a sense of understanding, or at the very least pretends to do so that the other Bureau members don't realize that she has her own agenda for being there. The fact that Jessie is so nonplussed by what's happening in the oldest house, another name for this Eldritch Abomination building, gives me the idea that she's probably seen this sort of thing before, as does her dialogue with whatever entity she keeps talking to internally. Part of me thinks the twist is going to be that this entity is me, the player, but I also feel like that's too obvious, so maybe it'll be something else entirely explained in time. On the gameplay side, there's not much to say about Control yet. The telekinesis is fun, and there's always something so satisfying about ripping out entire chunks of concrete from a wall and throwing it into a guy. I can only imagine I'll get even more abilities to play with later on, so I'm really looking forward to that. Control is a mystery, and it's one I want to solve, so yeah, I'll definitely be playing more of it in the future. Devil May Cry is a series that I didn't actually get into until Devil May Cry 4, and even then I didn't get fully invested in it until 5 rolled around. Kinda wild to think about too, considering that every single main character looks like an OC I would have designed in middle school, and I only love them more for that each time I play one of these games. To that end, I've never played the original trilogy of the Devil May Cry series. My recommendations for the series from people I know and trust are all over the place when it comes to these. Most people agree that Devil May Cry 1 is a dated game that the series has largely moved past and improved on, but it's an important part of the series' history. And basically everyone tells me to skip Devil May Cry 2, and Devil May Cry 3 is usually hailed as being the best game of the series, at least before 5 came out. To that end, I decided to only play Devil May Cry 1 for this video, and I gotta say, I have very mixed feelings on it. The game really does feel like it's from a different era, though that may be in part due to my knowledge that this game was originally being developed as Resident Evil 4, so that puts certain things into an interesting perspective. The fixed camera, the matter-of-fact description of things as you examine them, and the scouring of an old piece of architecture for keys for doors and pieces to puzzles all screams Resident Evil. But all that vanishes anytime combat starts or a cutscene plays, with Dante making some corny one-liner or getting impaled on his own sword and not really caring about it. That happened twice in the first hour. This man's ribcage has got to have so many problems with it. Devil May Cry 1 is clunky, but it was passable as a prototype to the series' staple of a stylish beat-em-up, at least up until the first boss fight. This goddamn spider boss took the wind out of my sails in such an annoying way. The bastard only has 2 specific weak points that you gotta hit, and he can kill you in just a few swipes, while wearing him down takes forever. Eventually, I found out that the best way to fight him was just to do hit-and-run strikes while avoiding getting screwed by the camera or getting too greedy with attacks until I could finish him off. And then he came back in the very next level and killed me again in a hallway. I don't know, I just have mixed feelings on this game in general. It doesn't feel too indicative of what the series has become or what I'm used to. I do like the idea of playing a bit of history, but if I'm in store for more annoyingly hard boss fights like this one, then maybe I'll skip this game and just go straight to DMC 3. But we'll see. Gonna put 1 down as a maybe, 2 down as a no unless I want to laugh, and 3 as a maybe depending on how 1 goes. To be honest, I'm not even sure why this game ended up in my Steam library. I don't know anyone that's played it, and I've never so much as read a review for it. For some reason I saw it on sale and thought, huh, that kinda looks like a Bloodborne character. Wonder what that's about. That's it. That was my whole basis for purchasing it. I am a responsible adult. Of course, after playing an hour of GreedFall, I find this game is anything but a Bloodborne or a Souls-like or even a Paul Revere simulator. In fact, this game is more along the lines of a BioWare RPG type of game. GreedFall is a game developed by spiders. How spiders made a video game, or why nobody's talking more about this miraculous accomplishment, is lost on me, but I think the first arachnid-developed game should be celebrated and not feared. In GreedFall, you play as Lord or Lady Desarde, a blue blood who lives in a fantasy, colonial-looking world. One that has your typical swashbuckling elements like cutlasses, flintlock pistols, and tricorn hats, but also one that is besieged by some sort of fantasy plague known as Malachor, something that your mother, the Princess Desarde, is unfortunately falling victim to. Your current quest involves you getting ready to leave port of this little fantasy colonial town and go on expedition to a mysterious island. But before you can do that, you gotta finish doing your tutorial quest, get your world building end, and build some affinity points with your starting companion Caden, Alistair, whoever else fits into this joke, take your pick. The problem with only playing an hour of RPGs is that these games are in it for the long haul, so it's hard to gauge exactly how the game is going to hold up after the first hour. So with that said, I can't form a strong opinion on GreedFall yet, but it does have me intrigued. The combat is real-time with opportunities to pause mid-battle if you need to take a breather and plan your next move. Different weapons have different properties, like how slower weapons tend to chew through armor easier but require better timing to use. I actually found the combat to be a little awkward to navigate at first, but by the end of my hour I was stabbing dudes left and right like a pro. Also, they give you a flintlock pistol in the game, and it is so satisfying to use to just blow someone onto their ass. It's like blasting someone with a cannon. Dishonored did this too. Why the hell are flintlock pistols in video games so damn satisfying to use? Anyway, I will play more GreedFall. The game has my curiosity, and honestly it scratches a nostalgic itch for this kind of RPG that I've been looking for a while now. Back in the early to mid-10s, it seemed like there was a nostalgic race going on to see who was going to be the next Mega Man, or at the very least playing off of nostalgia of games like Mega Man. Shovel Knight had elements of it, Mighty No. 9 was more of a direct comparison, but we all know how that one ended. And to be honest, I think the Azure Striker Gunvolt series was the only one to really pull off the Mega Man vibe correctly, while still maintaining its own identity. And in true Mega Man fashion, when the game got a sequel, it received an additional playable character who was color-coded red to the main hero's blue, and then that character received his own spin-off for some reason. That's what Luminous Avenger is. Gunvolt Chronicles Luminous Avenger 9, or maybe it's pronounced Luminous Avenger IX, is a spin-off of the Azure Striker Gunvolt series. Instead of following the titular character of Gunvolt, you instead play as his rival and former religious zealot, Copen. Luminous Avenger takes place in an alternate continuity from the original game, where Copen's world has been overtaken by superpowered beings known as Adepts, and the remaining non-powered humans, known as Minos, are in hiding. Copen comes across a small collection of Minos children and decides to do what he can to help them, fighting back against the Sumeragi Institute of Human Evolution and trying to accomplish his own goal. He does this alongside a handy robot companion known as Lola, who has the power to turn into a virtual idol girl and sing a powerful J-pop song that can bring Copen back from the dead should he fall. What the hell am I reading right now? I like the Gunvolt series. At this point, I've played all of them, including this one. And much like how it was in the original Mega Man series, I find the red protagonist more alluring than the blue one. I really liked Copen's fast-paced ping-pong aerial combat style in Gunvolt 2, so I was excited to play another game as him, where he's the sole playable character. And Luminous Avenger ended up being a lot of the same as Gunvolt 2, which is actually sort of the problem. Aside from new weapons and new bosses, there really isn't anything outstanding that Luminous Avenger does when compared to Gunvolt 2. The gameplay is the exact same. The level layouts are mostly the same, but a little more boring, and while the bosses are new, they're still the same old focus of wail on them for 2 phases, and then on their last health bar you try to dodge their super attack, and then kill them as quickly as possible. It's not that the formula itself is bad, it's just that I've seen it all before at this point, so the fact that they don't try to mix things up is a little disappointing. Furthermore, this game feels incredibly short. If we're going off of the standard 8 bosses and then a couple of final stages Mega Man formula, I think I made it through 70% of the game in my hour of playing. I'll probably finish up Luminous Avenger at some point, but I don't see it continuing on stream. I just don't have much interest in doing that with this game. and I don't think it'd be fun to watch. In the same vein as Mega Man, there were other games that had a sizable fan base that companies were looking to get back in on. Fallout was one of them, considering that fans of the series were a little disappointed with the direction that Fallout 4 had been taken under Bethesda, and were looking for something more along the lines of Fallout New Vegas, which had been developed by Obsidian Entertainment, something that Obsidian made sure to let you know in the marketing of their latest game, The Outer Worlds. But not to be confused with The Outer Wilds, a game that came out in the same year. There must have been some confused grandmothers at 2019's Christmas, huh? The Outer Worlds is a space western RPG set in the same general gameplay style as Fallout New Vegas, and you might think that's unfair, but like, look at it. It's Fallout New Vegas in space. And you know what? That's not a bad thing either. In fact, I think that's exactly what enticed me about this game. That being that it is Fallout New Vegas in space. Just like my conundrum with GreedFall, it's hard to get a good feel of how RPG is going to be just by playing it for an hour, but The Outer Worlds does show promise. It's got some humor in its dialogue and storytelling, which makes me believe this is going to be a little campy, something that I'm okay with. I think the only thing I'm a little iffy on is that every time I play a game like this, every single time, I end up making a stealthy melee character. Maybe I'll do something different this time. Maybe I'll go for a wisecracking gunslinger, a hacking tech nerd, a space marine beefcake. Oh, who am I kidding? I'm gonna be a sneaky, stabby McStabberton. Resident Evil is a series that appears to be in the process of remaking every single game in its library. As someone that started with Resident Evil 4 and didn't play the original 3 or Code Veronica, I don't personally mind that, since it means I get to experience these games, albeit in a different imagining. Anyway, I love the Resident Evil 2 remake. It was a fantastic game on its own, and based on what I've heard from people who played the original, it was also a respectful reimagining of a classic. The natural sense of progression after its success would be a remake of Resident Evil 3, and lo and behold, here we are. Resident Evil 3 Remake feels like an action-fied expansion pack of Resident Evil 2 Remake. However, the result is that there's also not a whole lot I can say constructively about Resident Evil 3 Remake. I'm gonna play it. I enjoyed my hour with it. It has an action-packed opening and establishes Nemesis as the unflinching threat that he is. Granted, I've heard he doesn't follow you everywhere like in the original game, but somehow I don't think I'll mind that too much because I found that particular aspect of Mr. X in Resident Evil 2 Remake to be kind of obnoxious. Also, as a side note, there are giant mutant spiders in this game, and they are the worst. Hey Capcom, what's up with the spiders? This is the second game on this list that has an insufferable spider enemy. Why are you making us hate spiders? They don't have to be all that bad. I mean, look at the spiders that made GreedFall. They're out here following their dreams and not shoving parasites down our throats. Be a little bit more sensitive. Question. Have you ever wanted to play a game where you were a raccoon skating down a highway on a longboard set to a neon sky and some chill lo-fi beats, synthwave, electric swing, and the like? If you answered yes, then I've got some good news for you. Followed by many, many questions. Tanuki Sunset is a game I came across some time ago while it was still in development. Saw a trailer of the main character, Tanuki, skating down a highway, and I was hooked. I did not care how good or bad this game was going to be. I wanted to play it. I wanted to play it so bad. Well, thankfully, it just came out and I got my chance. And it's about what I expected it to be. Tanuki Sunset is a blissfully chill game where you ride a longboard as a raccoon down a highway, pulling off tricks and trying to get as high of a score as you can while avoiding traffic. Occasionally, other elements will come into play, like specific obstacles you have to avoid or challenges you can complete, like racing Steven the Seagull for some sweet new custom gear. But otherwise, the formula is incredibly simple. I don't know how many ways I can describe this to you. It's a game where you play as a raccoon skateboarding down a highway to synthwave. Of course, it's also for that reason I can't really see Tanuki Sunset as a stream kind of game. If you want a chill atmosphere to put in the background and vibe to, you can just put on lo-fi hip-hop beats to relax and study to. Still recommend this game, but maybe at a reduced price in the future. The game's fun and chill, but it's also really short. I'm not sure I can justify the $15 price tag to everybody. It happens without fail. Anytime you express interest in something, people will come to you and recommend other things of a similar caliber. Oh, you like Halo? Well, you might enjoy another series about a certain green space marine. Oh, you like Zelda? Well, imagine if Link was a wolf. No, imagine another wolf. Recommendations like these often lead me to finding some other gems that I may not have played before, which is why whenever I say I like Fire Emblem, for example, I'll occasionally get the recommendation to play another well-known strategy RPG known as XCOM. But I never played that one, so here's XCOM 2 instead. XCOM 2 is a strategy RPG where you play as a faceless military commander leading humanity's resistance against an alien occupation. And to my understanding, I think this game takes place in an alternate timeline to the original XCOM, despite having the conspicuous 2 in the name, but seeing as how I never played the original game, I'm not going to spend too much time worrying about any of the implications of that. The game is your classic strategy RPG basis gameplay-wise. You take time swapping turns with an enemy AI, each of you moving your forces around a gridded map and trying to outmaneuver each other while trying to complete objectives and murder the crap out of each other. XCOM 2 seems to have a lot of focus on research and development at your home base of improving your equipment for your soldiers and trying to take advantage of ambushes and stealth whenever you can. That sort of gameplay narrative makes sense for what the game's story is going for. You're a resistance force in this game, not a giant army. You're supposed to get in, shoot a few aliens, grab an objective, and then get out quickly before reinforcements arrive and overwhelm you. I'd say the game does a pretty good job of introducing you to that concept as well, considering the tutorial mission involves half of your forces getting slaughtered while the rest barely escape. And honestly, XCOM 2 seems like a game I'll enjoy playing, but I don't think I'll be playing it on the stream. Strategy RPGs tend to be slow, involve lots of waiting, and also include a bit of trial and error. I just don't think that's an interesting stream game in my opinion. Also, I'll just go ahead and say it, I don't really want to broadcast getting my shit rocked by aliens over and over again, which would definitely happen if I streamed this game. 2020 was a crappy year. I don't think I need to go much deeper into that, but there were some good games I got to play on stream, so that was nice. I really liked doing this 1-hour impression review last year, and I also like doing it again this year. It's fun to just take a moment and walk through your library like this. I hope to make it an annual tradition, and honestly, I recommend anyone trying this out. If you've got a bunch of games on backlog that you're not sure if you'll ever play, just set some time aside and play an hour of a bunch of them and see if you want to keep them. I know that many of you don't subscribe to this channel to watch streams, and I'm going to keep striving to make more regular video content next year. It was just hard this year for a number of reasons, but hopefully we can get back in the saddle soon. So those of you that have stuck around, thanks again for watching. I hope that 2021 treats us better. Have a good one, and I'll see you next time.